Hey, good morning. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. Hope you're having a great Wednesday so far. I do appreciate you being with me. By the way, I've got to apologize to you. My wife and I had intended, and I'll blame myself, not her for sure. Isn't that smart? Anyway. We had intended to put together another great book package for you this month. I've just simply dropped the ball on that, but I'm going to work on that in the next day or so. So I'll make up for the tardiness of putting together a package. Hopefully, I will be able to include this in it. It may be a pre-order, pre-publication type of order, but like I mentioned to you yesterday, I think this book is going to bring clarity to the understanding of the Olivet Discourse and the Apostles' questions. I examine issues. Did the Old Testament predict the AD 70 destruction of Jerusalem? Well, if it did, and it does, and if the apostles knew that, and I'm pretty sure they did, then how could they be confused when Jesus predicted the fall of Jerusalem? Furthermore, did those Old Testament prophecies conflate, join, connect the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70 with the end of the age and eschatology, the day of the Lord? And the answer to that is absolutely they did. So if the Old Testament made predictions of the AD 70 destruction of Jerusalem and conflated that event with the day of the Lord and the new creation, salvation, the kingdom, and if the apostles knew those prophecies, then how would they have been confused when Jesus predicted the fall of Jerusalem? How would they have been ignorant when they conflated that event with the day of the Lord and the end of the age? That was the Old Testament data. See, that's just part of what's in this upcoming book. So anyway, my wife and I will put together a package very, very soon that's going to save you really good money. All right. As promised yesterday, what I want us to do this morning is to take a look at Matthew 24 and verse 36. But of that day and hour knows no man, no, not the angels, but the Father only. That's conflating Matthew 24:36 and Mark 13. Was Jesus simply making some kind of a statement? Or was he making what is to us, modern Western readers, an obscure statement that had no connection with his culture, with his world, with his religion? I suggested to you yesterday, I am absolutely firmly convinced that Jesus was drawing on the language of the Jewish feast days, letting them know that the impending destruction would be and would take place during the Jewish feast days. It wouldn't tell you exactly which one, although it would indicate it very strongly. Matter of fact, to the observant Jew, what? Oh, that's what that meant. And what I mean by that is this terminology of not knowing the day and the hour belonged to one particular feast day. Here's something you need to know. Every month, every cycle of the month was called Rosh Chodesh, the head of the month, the beginning of the month. And knowledge of the timing of the first day of the month, the beginning, the head of the month, was absolutely critical for understanding when to observe the feast days. And here's what's so critical. There was one particular feast day from which the other feast days were calculated. Because when they knew this day, then they could count 30 days, 30 days, 30 days, because their calendar was a 30-day based calendar. But that singular feast day was called a festival of the new moon. And that festival was Rosh Hashanah. Something really strange about Rosh Hashanah. It was distinctive in that it was inextricably tied to the new moon. All right? Now, the problem was you didn't always know when the new moon would be. Because after all, if you've got fog that soaks in or that settles in for a day, 2 days, 3 days, 4, whatever, you can't see the moon. If you have heavy overcast skies, you can't see the new moon. You can't see what they call the horns of the moon. You know, that little bitty tiny sliver of the moon that is just barely visible. That's called the new moon. And they called it the horns of the moon. So since it was possible, very possible, to not be able to see the moon, the new moon, and yet it was critical to know when the new moon might appear, pardon me, because after all, this is Rosh Hashanah. We'll talk more about what that meant, what Rosh Hashanah foretold, symbolized, typified. But the Jews, in order to avoid the problem, the potentiality of not knowing when the new moon had appeared, they would gather together sets of witnesses. And these men had to be thoroughly examined, vetted, to use the modern terminology, to know that they were honest, to know that they were trustworthy, and to check their eyes. And as they believed that the new moon was close to approaching, they would send a witness to this mountain. Then they would send another witness to this mountain, another witness over there. And their duty was to watch for the new moon. Now, you know as well as I do, weather over here can be overcast, weather over here can be clear, or whatever. When the new moon was spotted, that witness ran to the Sanhedrin and made his report. The Sanhedrin then called 2 witnesses. I'm trying to figure that out. Those 2 witnesses would then examine and cross-examine this witness who said the new moon had appeared. They would ask every kind of question imaginable. Did you see the new moon in front of the sun? If they said yes, guess what? They didn't accept that testimony. When they were satisfied that the witness had actually literally seen the new moon, they reported to the Sanhedrin. And the Sanhedrin would then announce the day upon which Rosh Hashanah was to be observed, and they would declare, sanctified. That was heralded, that was shouted to the inhabitants and citizens of Jerusalem. Sanctified. It's time for Rosh Hashanah. Now, Paul said in Colossians chapter 2, 14 to 16, let no man judge you in respect of new moons, feast days, and Sabbaths, which are present, active, indicative, a shadow of the good things that are about to come. So when Paul wrote those Jewish feast days, the feast day of the new moon, Rosh Hashanah, was, when Paul wrote, a shadow. It was not fulfilled. Pardon me. It was still a shadow of the good things about to come. And that meant judgment. The judgment was near. It meant that that day, typified by the Jewish festival of Rosh Hashanah, was about to find its fulfillment. And when would that be? At the judgment. We'll explore this more on the flip side.